everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Are you there?
Hello, Rob. Hi.
Come
Hi.
in.
Oh, it's me. It's Diana.
Are you in the pond?
I'm in the pond.
Inside joke.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
No. You ever read A Kiss for a Little Bit? Well, who are you, mystery co-host?
I'm mystery co-host number 3, a.k.a. Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
Hi.
It's from the Maurice. It's not Maurice Sendak who writes it. I forget who writes it. Minerick. A Kiss for Little Bear, which of all the Little Bear books is the best Little Bear book.
I don't have Little Bear books, but I should probably take them from you.
Oh, they're really good.
They're really cute.
All right,
really
I'll get
good.
some.
If you like Frog and Toad, you'll
I love Frog and Toad.
Oh, they're not quite Frog and Toad. They're
Okay.
pretty close.
Will they make me cry? Because all baby books make me cry.
No.
No, if they have any feel-good part in it, I'm crying.
Oh, okay.
That happened to me
Yeah.
with my first child.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, we're friends? Sob.
Yeah, I couldn't read him any books.
Oh, like I'm going to just veer off for 1 second.
Okay.
That,
just
shocking.
one.
I know, right? That The Night You Were Born book. If anyone has
no.
ever
Oh,
read that
forget
book.
it. No, that book is no. Yeah, you cry.
I got
Can't.
that, and I'm reading it. I'm like,
That's a cry book. Yeah.
like one page is like, if you strike out in baseball, if you feel alone. Like just thinking about it now, just like makes me
Don't
tear up.
cry. Don't cry.
Seriously, it makes me tear up. I'm like, I'm trying to read it. I'm like, hold yourself together, Jackie.
I first read that book at my aunt and uncle's house, and I was probably like 10 or 11, so really should not have been like bawling, crying at the end of it.
So yeah, if anyone
Don't tell
wants,
anybody.
I know. If anyone wants a good cry, The Night You Were Born.
Aw.
Board book, getcha.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, so in any case, this is not a podcast about children's literature that makes you cry. This is a podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research. And this week is no exception. And for those of you who've been waiting and saying, when are you guys going to do a podcast about supervision? Guess what? It's today. Today is the podcast about supervision.
Oh, my goodness.
We're live in Supervision Land. It's Rob.
Hey, welcome live. So if you are listening to these when they come out, this is September, and we are going to be doing a September Supervision month. Supervision September. We are going to be doing 3 episodes in a row, not preview episode like we usually do. 3 full episodes, because instead of doing a research articles, we are doing a book club. So I think we're calling this like Supervision Book Club, part 1, 2, 3, just in case we do another supervision episode in the future.
Yeah.
That may not be a book club.
I like that.
So what we did is we went ahead and we read the Supervisor's Guidebook by Reid, Green, and Parsons, 2012. And we are going to be breaking it up into not 3 chapters, but 3 sections. Sort of, I mean, the book itself is 3 sections. We're sort of going to mostly follow that kind of guideline of the book. So we'll be doing some individual chapters.
Makes sense.
Yeah, right.
I really wish it was called the Supervisor's Guidebook to the Galaxy.
No.
They need
I
to
really
be serious.
I want it to have more of a title.
That's really
Supervisor's Guidebook to the Galaxy.
That's solar system centric of you, Diana. We don't know what supervision might be like on other planets.
You're right. That's fair to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then Supervisor's Guidebook on Earth
Okay.
would round out the title better.
That
perhaps.
goes without saying.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to specify that you're on Earth when you're doing this book.
Sometimes you do.
Maybe the future Martian colonists will be supervising their Mars workers and saying, "Oh, this book is not applicable."
But you know what? It will be applicable because the laws of science apply no matter where you are.
It's true.
And all of this just boils down to the laws of science surrounding human behavior.
Mm-hmm. Had any of you read this before we decided to do this? Jackie, you had. I think you're the only one
I
who
had.
read this.
Yeah.
I don't know why I asked the question. I kind of knew the
I've
answer.
read this book before. It's in my book of likes books club.
I had
Yeah.
not.
Nor had I. I
But
got
you
it.
know
My
what?
mom
It's a
got it for
good
me as a
one.
birthday present.
Oh, your mom loves you.
That's sweet. But it's a good one. And if you are supervising, folks, you should read it.
I do recommend all of my the Regis practicum on-site practicum supervisors. This is the book I recommend, and I usually do my 8-hour lecture from.
Yeah,
the 8-hour
I kind of wish I'd
supervisor
read it a
training.
long time ago because it has great info in it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone listening along, we highly encourage you to read this book, not just listen to us.
Right, and they did not pay us to read this book and review it.
Nope.
No?
Just so you know.
It is
So
written.
you should go buy it.
It is written very simply. It is very straightforward.
Very.
Sometimes it feels like it is not even written for a BCBA.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is written very much for someone who's supervising BCBAs, but kind of, I think as we get into it, there are lots of sections where they're like, if you don't know what you would do for this problem behavior, ask somebody to tell you. I'm like, well, I would hope I know how to do that. I know how to do that better than I know how to supervise people, I think.
Right,
Not
but that
now,
gives you the chance so that either if you're just starting out, it's a great book to read because it gives you a lot of background introductory information. And then if you have been supervising people for a while, it would be a quick read because there are many portions that you can say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I know that. But there are still some really great nuggets and tips in here that would be really useful to you, too.
Mm-hmm. And I think even though a lot of they refer to it in the book as evidence-based training or competency-based training, or they do mention also as behavioral skills training. That has been kind of making the rounds. I see that a lot more in the literature. I see people describing it more. So I think our field knows what that is without a lot more description than, say, 5 years ago when this book was written. But there's so much more in here that goes beyond that. So I think we're going to focus more on those sections. Although, we will spend more time, I think, this episode than others talking about BST. All right. That's enough preamble.
Cool.
We good? We feel like we're ready to go?
Yeah.
Everyone's ready to join us on our adventure?
Let's all take a deep breath. And let's begin.
So, Jackie, you are going to start us off. This first section is sort of tentatively titled, What Do You Do as a Supervisor?
Stick to what you know. Really sums up chapter 2.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so what I'm going to be giving you for chapter 2 is an overview of the evidence-based protocol for supervising staff performance. Chapter 2 seems like a very general chapter, so I think it's laying the framework for the rest of the book. So I'm going to generally tell you the steps that you should follow. We will really go into depth for each of these steps and how you would do them, because when I was reading this chapter, I found myself being like, give me examples. What do you mean? Or like asking myself questions. So when I go through and kind of review what they talk, I may ask you guys some questions just so you're prepared.
We are ready.
On what you might do. Yeah.
Ready.
So the thing I took home, the biggest golden nugget, is that one should always remember that supervision is an active process. So supervision isn't something that you're like, oh, I'm supervising someone. Yep. Great, they're doing their job, then I leave.
I'll be doing that from 10:30 to 11 on Tuesday.
How's it going? Good, great.
Great.
Did you say yes?
Up.
Okay.
Yeah. And so as I was reading this chapter, when they were talking about this active process, I was thinking about all of the staff that I have supervised in the past, and the staff that I think were doing a great job were the staff that I knew what they were doing. So if anyone asked me, where's this person at? I could be like, oh, yeah, they're doing this, and this well. They're doing this we're working on. Here are the programs they're running during the day. Here what they're doing like in their free time at work, when I really was, part of the process and in their work life. I feel like the staff that I maybe didn't do as well are the staff when someone would ask me those questions, I couldn't necessarily answer them all the way. So, like, how are they good with running incidental teaching? I'd be like, I think they're okay. Like, if you have to say I think, you probably aren't doing a great job.
Yeah.
So it's this active process, and they give you these 7 steps to follow when you are going to be supervising. No, because it's an active process, supervision is going to take a lot of your time. So it isn't that I'm going to supervise you on Tuesdays from 11 to 12, right? Yeah, right. That will be. I will be observing you from 11 to 12, but then there's going to be some front work on what are we going to talk about, what am I going to read. There's going to be a lot of back work or follow-up. How am I going to process this observation? How am I going to deliver feedback? How am I going to have them have extra practice opportunities? How am I going to make sure that they're succeeding in this supervision opportunity that I'm seeing? So
yeah, supervision feels a lot to me like, matter can neither be created nor destroyed. It's like you can figure out ways to make your supervision more efficient. You can figure out ways to change how your supervision is done, but it's not like, and that was how I cut my supervision down from, needing all these hours to only 15 minutes a day. No, somebody has to do the supervision work, whether it's you, whether it's someone that you teach how to be like a co-supervisor or a helper on the floor. Somebody is watching, somebody's looking. And then even when you've supervised and everyone knows how to do everything perfectly, guess what? Now you get to supervise them doing new things.
Right. Yeah, and so they do point that out, is that if you're going to be an effective supervisor, it's going to be a lot of work. So just know that up front. Even if you have highly trained staff, you still are going to have to put the time in to make sure that they continue to be highly trained, right? That they continue to be motivated to do their job. One thing they do say, one advantage, is that you don't have to keep going over the same skill deficits over and over and over and over again if you're an effective supervisor. If you're an effective supervisor, you can pinpoint the skill deficit, provide opportunities for change, and then move on to something else. So I know in my life, in the past, I have not done a good job in some instances of I knew what the skill deficit was, and I just kept trying to do the same thing over and over and over. No, that's not right. Look, I'm going to show you. But then maybe didn't follow through with having them do it and me watching or, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we're just repeating the same skill over and over, and I know they're getting frustrated, I'm getting frustrated. That doesn't help anyone. So know that if you are an effective supervisor, then you won't hit that horrible wheel of frustration because you're going to be able to objectively pinpoint the problem and find a solution and then move on to something else that may be helpful.
Yeah, and it's easy to say, well, I can't spend more time training folks because I'm so busy, I don't have enough time.
Right.
But this is one of those situations where the more you put in, the more you're going to get back in return. So if you can put the work up front in training, setting up your systems well to have effective trainings and effective follow-up, then you're going to get that time back in the end because you're not going to be, like you're saying, spinning your wheels.
Right. So that's another advantage is over time, you will save a little bit of time dealing with a lot of problems.
Yeah, less problems, more supervision for the fun stuff like new techniques and getting everyone, trained in best practice.
Right.
Less time on, oh, this is how you prompt.
Right.
Just read the steps. It's right there.
Yeah.
Is rolling your eyes on the list, Jackie?
Yeah, you probably should not do that. But we're not there yet, so don't ruin it. So before I go into generally talking about each of the steps, I want to just tell you what they are so that you...
Yeah,
and
no some spoiler. Of them I think we'll go over briefly here, and then we'll go into more depth this episode, next episode. Too.
Yeah. Reid, Parsons, and Green suggest that the protocol for evidence-based supervision is done in 7 steps. She'd have all 7 steps in mind each time you're doing a supervision. Okay. So the first one is identify desired consumer outcomes. The second step is specify what staff must do to assist consumers in attaining desired outcomes. Step 3, train staff in the performance skills specified in Step 2. Step 4, monitor staff performance. Step 5, support proficient staff performance. Step 6, correct non-proficient staff performance. And Step 7, continuously evaluate staff performance and consumer outcome attainment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we'll be focusing on 1, 2, 3 today.
Great. Cool. Well, for Step 1, identify consumer outcomes. Here, what we want to make sure that we are doing is that we are having a mission statement. What is it that our agency wants to do? And so I call that the outcome management approach. So first, identifying all of the things that, in the end, these are the goals of your agencies. If you're working with adults, maybe you have vocational outcomes. If you're working in a residential facility, maybe you're working on self-care outcomes, happy life outcomes. Maybe if you're in an educational setting, you're looking for, educational outcomes. And as I was thinking about this, everywhere we've worked has mission statements, right? Mm-hmm. Everywhere we work, I think, has these outcomes. We're going to improve the lives of the people that we serve by blah, 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 blah. And I think sometimes the mission can be lost. Mm-hmm. So without actively thinking about that mission statement and what the consumer outcome is, I think sometimes when you're doing supervision, when you're caught up in the day-to-day, that mission statement can be lost. Do you guys agree, or have you not seen that before?
No, I think so. I don't think it was until maybe the past 5 or 6 years of my professional career, or even my life, where I felt there was a value in sort of, let's sit down and talk about what we're doing here and what's the purpose and what services we're offering and why. It was one of those tasks like they make you do in 3rd grade. Like, let's talk about the rules of the classroom. You're like, oh, who cares? Don't hit people, steal, I guess. And it seems just so pointless. It's busy work. Teacher didn't have time to make a lesson.
Right.
But it is very valuable because when you can say, it's sort of like when we talk about our ethical code.
Uh-huh.
You have to go back and say, why am I doing this? And if you're like, well, because this from your mission statement, and one of the things you're saying is not on that mission statement, the question becomes, oh, is this a waste of my time?
Right.
Or do I not have a good mission statement and other people should be doing what I'm doing?
Yeah. I think a mission statement or identifying the outcomes for your clients first off in supervision and maybe reminding yourself of that maybe on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis will help you stay focused on what's important and kind of not thinking about other things or going off on tangents, even though we do a ton on our podcast. But if we always are like, we always come back. Because our mission is provide high quality behavior analytic discussions.
It also is to be a
little bit funny.
A little bit funny and fun. Like that was part of our mission.
You're right.
Statement.
That you're right. It was. But it's always good to remind yourself that. And I think especially when you work for larger agencies, I think sometimes the mission statement gets lost a little bit. Mm-hmm. I know I've worked in smaller agencies, larger agencies, and it seems like when there's a lot of people working with you, a lot of coming from different angles, I think that's where, if you're not diligent about reminding everyone why we're here, that can get a little bit murky.
Yeah. And I think that perspective comes as you have been a supervisor.
I think so too, yeah.
For longer and longer. And I always think of it, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you have, Rob, I don't know if you have, Jackie, seen like old Disney examples of how they made the old hand-drawn movies.
I have not.
Okay. But Rob, you probably have, right? So the backgrounds, they would paint on sheets of transparent paper, plastic paper, and they would overlay and overlay and overlay them until they created a really in-depth picture.
Ooh.
And then they would lay in the characters on top of that so that then they didn't need to change the background. They could just change the top layers of the transparencies.
That's
right?
clever.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. I think there's one on Snow White is maybe where I'm getting this from.
There's a good, if you watch, I forget what it was originally packaged as. I think it was a TV show, but if The Reluctant Dragon is a good, if you can find that, that is a good example because most of that is some celebrity of the 50s or whatever going through the Disney studios, and he meets the guy
that's it. Okay.
who does the Donald Duck voice, and they show the giant camera where they take the pictures, and they demonstrate that process.
Yeah, but as you're starting your career and you're just a one-to-one paraprofessional, you don't get that full picture, right? You're focused in on a really fine-grained level of your own work, and as you move up and have the opportunity to contact more and more aspects of the agency you work for and work with more and more people, then you start adding in those layers of transparency, kind of like a film like that, until you have the full view. And I think as you're adding those layers, that's when you can start to really see what is our end goal here, what is the mission that we're working toward. And being able to share that down with people who you are supervising can really benefit them in order for them to start to see that big picture.
Can I steal your simile for a second, Diana? So it'd sort of be like the equivalent of when you first start, you're looking at the animation cells of Donald Duck and Mickey moving because you're paying attention to those details. But as you get better at your job, you start seeing the background, the setting, you start hearing the musical cue, you get the whole movie.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Wow, guys. Okay. Marriage at its finest right now.
We finish each other's
sandwiches.
Oh my goodness. Once we have identified our outcomes, our client outcomes, then for step 2 it would be specifying staff performance. So that's not only what the staff are doing necessarily, but what are other variables that could affect staff performance, such as tardiness, what are you going to do in your spare time, at work obviously. Step 3, train work skills to staff. So here they really stress that you're not just saying, oh yeah, you did it great, but you're doing performance training, competency-based training. You have objective steps that you want each of your staff to perform. You have a criterion to mastery. Step 4 is in monitoring staff performance. So you really need to know where your staff are. That's, like where they are at specific skills, specific job responsibility. No, like
possibly physically.
Possibly physically, they should be where you want them to be, but where they are
in their job performance.
Okay, gotcha. So if someone asked you out of the blue, "Hello, I'm supervising blah blah blah. How are they at different components of discrete trial?" And if that's something they do at their job, you should be able to say, "Yes, here's where they are at. Here's what they don't do well." And I think that integrates you into their work life. And then the step 5 is to support proficient staff performance. This, I think, gets lost
Mm-hmm.
all the time, right? You really focus on those troublesome, weakest link staff in your classroom, and then you're like, that staff that's doing amazing, that's doing everything I ask, they're great. We don't really need to do anything
They
with
get
them.
the thumbs up as you walk by.
Right.
Looks good. Yep. Okay, bye.
Whoa, great. Yeah. And, you know, what happens then? We all know that if great performance isn't at least intermittently reinforced, great performance is going to decrease. So I love that they put that before step 6, which is correct non-proficient staff performance. So if you see staff performing in a way that is not ideal for you or optimal, then you take steps to correct that. And I'm sure we're going to spend a bunch of time
A big
on
old
that
bunch
step.
of time.
Yep.
Yeah. And then finally, step 7 is evaluate staff performance. So remember, supervision is this ongoing process. So just because I've done step 1 through 6, I'm like, woo! For each staff, I've done it. Week 1, I am done. I throw my papers in the air, do a little jig. No. Then just like that Etsy, I have to go back and pick up the papers. Have you seen this?
Yep.
Or summy cards?
Someone gave it.
Oh,
Yeah. Woo,
It's
it's
like-
Friday. I don't need this. Oh, I have to
Right?
pick this
Oh,
up.
I
This
have
date
to-
is important.
It was like, well, tomorrow's Friday. And then they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually need these. So it's an ongoing process here. I guess their final take-home point in this overview chapter was, if your staff don't like what you're doing, you need to stop doing it because it will not be effective. They're like, even if you think it's the most effective thing in the whole world, if people hate you for doing it, you are not going to be an effective supervisor. I think that's actually key because, you know, not judging our behavior analytic community, but sometimes if you're in a supervisory role, it's hard to pick up those social cues, right? Because
It's
you're
true.
like, I'm your supervisor, you are my supervisee, you do what I say. And it shouldn't be that way in all aspects, right? It should be this collaborative effort where we're working together.
Yeah, because we're still trying to produce socially meaningful and valid change on behavior. It's no different than what we would do for client behavior. So
Absolutely.
if it's not going well because your clients are not happy, which in this case would be your staff, you need
They
to
will
make
quit.
changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if your staff quit on you because they don't find what you're doing acceptable, you'll have no one to work for you.
Yep.
Or you will
It's
just have
called
to
being-
get new staff and
Right.
do all the stuff that you've done 50 times already yet again. And that's really inefficient. I do like how this book does spend a lot of time preaching what they say. So when they talk about, you have to explain the mission and go over what it is you want them to do. This book did that a lot every chapter. Well, here's why you do it this way.
Right.
I know it seems silly to say this, but we find that these are the positive outcomes, not just in, hey, now my staff do it, but also in the, hey, most staff really like this because, and then they go
Right.
into those descriptions. So some of these practices, I think, you know, we already do. Some of them I feel like I read and I was like, some of these I'd tweak a little bit, but not too many. But according to the book, if you follow what they say here, not only will you be a good supervisor, but your staff will love you.
Yeah. So that's chapter 2 in a nutshell.
Awesome.
So let's get into, so we have our workplace, we have our mission statement. You know, we may or may not be involved in developing the mission statement, but we should know what the mission statement is. And after that, we need to start supervising staff, which is going to include the content of the next chapter, which is telling them what it is they are supposed to be doing.
Yes. So the title of chapter 3 is Specifying Staff Work Responsibilities, which pretty much encompasses what they talk about
The end.
in this chapter. And it's exactly the place where you need to start, right? So like I said, the whole idea here is going to map on pretty precisely to what we would do with our clients if we're looking to increase particular behaviors that they engage in or decrease behaviors that we don't want to see them engage in. It's the same idea because the principles of behavior are applicable to all of our behavior, no matter what it is or no matter who those people are. So to start increasing or decreasing any behavior, you first of all have to define what those behaviors are. So that's what this chapter really goes over, is ensuring that if you're asking your staff to do something, that you have clearly defined for them and for you what it is that you're asking them to do.
And why you're asking them to do it.
And why you're asking them to do it. They go over like 3 main points in this chapter, I would say. The first point is that you must specify exactly what you're looking for from your staff. So develop performance objectives for them and for you to make sure that is clear. So the example that they gave was, let's say you're working at a facility that works with older adults with disabilities, and one of the missions of your company is that you're treating those adults with dignity. Okay, which sounds great, and that sounds good. But the point that they made is that just saying treat everyone with dignity and leaving it at that really leaves that terminology open for interpretation. So
I define dignity as they are all wearing stovepipe hats, the most dignified of hats.
Right. See, so that is a bizarre definition, but that could be the one that you are working from.
You should have supervised me better. I'm a loose cannon.
But I would like to be part of that that place. I love hats.
Hats are great. Now there's a little star next to Rob's name on your list because you're like, I don't know about this guy. He may not work out.
I'm showing initiative.
And that was another example too. Is what does showing initiative mean? Right. So with dignity,
Buying people stovepipe hats. Until I'm told differently.
wow, that Rob, he's really a go-getter.
Fired.
What's he trying to get to? I don't know. But, their example was, some might define with dignity as treating the older clients just as you would treat your older family members in your family, and then others might define dignity as treating them just as you would any younger people that they would work with. But both of those might be controversial ways of interpreting with dignity and not what the supervisors or the agency had intended at all. So you need to be providing clearer definitions for your performance objectives for your staff. So there were 3 criteria for specifying staff performance. The first was that every responsibility, so every work performance objective that you set, must be specified in terms of actual behavior. So work behavior that you're looking for. Again, that makes sense. We're going to be looking to define behavior. So this is where the example came in, Rob, about showing initiative. It's a great thing to write down, showing initiative, but if it's not something that we can objectively define and then observe, then it's going to be really hard for us to identify staff who have shown initiative or say with confidence to someone that they have or have not shown initiative.
Being a supervisor, I think this is always like a work in progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you won't necessarily know all of the performance goals right off the bat, I think, sometimes. Right. So sometimes you may have an outline of this is what I want you to do. Here is how I describe it. But then some things come up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something to remember is that what you write in the beginning is not your final manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another example that they had was if you're going to say that someone has a bad attitude, then you would need to define what that means as well, right? And for me, I thought that was really interesting, and it brings up a side note as well that if you're going to go to the lengths to define something like that, I think that it's important to bear in mind that the definition that you're writing is the same across all people, right?
Yeah.
Because the first thing I thought of when I read bad attitude is that maybe you would write down that they smile more, right? But I think that can be a potential landmine to walk into because some women do not like to be asked to smile more.
That's true.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one that gets missed a lot, the sort of the definition of those abstract,
Right.
Improvement or great workplace terms. Because I know I've worked in a number of places, and I'm sure we've all had that person that we loved working with. We thought they always showed initiative, and they were hilarious, and everyone else just hated them.
Yep.
And
that
the
has
reasons
happened.
we said, I love that person, were the same reasons that I hate that person. And it's like, we probably want to define, you say they have a bad attitude. I say they have a great attitude. We clearly have no definition for the word attitude that we agree with. Or this person's some sort of sneaky monster.
Goody two shoes brown noser. Is that the definition?
Of good attitude versus bad
No,
attitude.
I'm just kidding.
I want
One
to see
would
smiles.
hope not.
Smiles all day long.
Or what's that movie where Jennifer Aniston has to wear her bling?
What is that movie?
Office Space.
Office
Yeah.
Space.
You got to wear her flare.
Yeah, her
Yeah.
You need
flare.
30 pieces of flare.
30 pieces of flare.
So that's actually very objective.
It is.
So the movie wants us to think that's a bad workplace, but actually it is a great workplace.
Right? We know we have the behavior that is required of us. It's very specific. 30 pieces of flare.
Yep.
Good point.
Disney World is very clear about that. We took a behind the scenes tour, and as we were walking out, we got to go behind where the employees go, and there'd be signs like visitors can see you from here. So you have to be, whatever your job is, you have a very defined, this is what your costume looks like, this is how you are acting. So you cannot do anything but that past this point. And they even at one point had like a mirror. So as you were about to walk past, you could look and say, do I look like I'm supposed to look? And am I objectively dressed appropriately?
Am I objectively
and looking appropriately?
Jasmine?
Yeah, I look like Jasmine.
Do I meet my checklist for Jasmine?
Midriff must be 2 inches above belly button. Aladdin Fez, 90-degree angle from, yeah.
It was so hot in Disney World. And I was talking to an employee, and I said, oh, at least you get to wear shorts with your costume or whatever, your uniform. And she said, yeah, but if you have tattoos, then you have to have them covered. So a lot of the pants wearing folks.
So we've got a whole
And
generation of Americans
sleeves.
that will not be able to work at Disney World because
Yeah.
I see a lot of tattoos these days. Because I'm an old man, I'm complaining about that.
Rob's crotchety.
You know what really grinds my gears?
So they talked about, as you were saying, Rob, defining those more nebulous terms that we like to throw in there, but perhaps haven't given that much thought as to defining them. And they also, in a more concrete way, also listed out some examples of things that you would need to define that are just strictly work-related behavior, like requesting vacation. You say someone needs to request vacation. Well, if they're new to your company, they may not know how to do that. So writing out a definition of, you need to submit this form to Paula 2 weeks in advance of the date that you need off is the definition of requesting vacation. That's going to help out people better. And that way, if you later on say, well, I can't give you this because you didn't request vacation, they will know exactly what the parameters were.
That's my least favorite supervision, the sort of how to work here at our company kind of supervision. Because I go to any ABA agency, you know how to reinforce, you know what discrete trial is, you can do most of the job, and the things that people are going to be like, hey, I know you're new, but you didn't do are you forgot to request vacation appropriately, or you parked in the wrong place, and that stuff drives me nuts because you just want to yell like, I'm really good at behavior analysis, who cares whether this is garbage? But if they care about it and it's part of their supervision package, then I guess you can deal with it. They don't tell you about it, though. Oh, I'll throw this book right in their face.
You should have read the manual.
I will literally throw this book right in their face.
The manual of Supervisor
The
Guidebook
HR.
of Earth.
Yeah. No, I meant when you start somewhere, they give you orientation stuff.
I know.
You're like, I'll read that later.
Oh, I thought you meant this book.
Yeah, I haven't been anywhere that's bad, but it always scares me that it's going to be like that. Like, oh, you forgot the 30 pieces of flair on your...
You never know. It could be.
Do the consumers care about this? Is this important? Okay.
So they also note that trying to define every single behavior that every single employee could ever engage in might be a little bit overwhelming for you as a supervisor, which I thought was fair because I was getting panicked as I read this. So it said that's okay. What you should do is choose behaviors that are most relevant, first of all, to client outcome, right? So what are the behaviors that we need to define on the part of our employees that are going to benefit the clients most? And then secondary to that, identifying and defining behavior that's potentially going to interfere with those outcomes. So
Like being late.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're the same.
Okay, so that was criteria 1.
Dinah, before we get into criteria 2,
Sure.
I just wanted to pause for a moment. So if you are listening to ABA Inside Track because you just love the mellifluous sound of our voices, bravo. We love that you love that too. If you are, however, listening because you'd like to get continuing education credits, well, lucky you. We are ACE approved by the BACB, and we did just get reapproved. Hooray! Every time I reapply, I'm like, this is the time they're going to tell me, what is your show? No, thank you. But nope, we're reapproved. So this will count towards continuing education credit, and it will count as supervision continuing education credit. Ooh, the elusive supervision CE.
So that when you get your certificate, they'll have that little statement on the bottom saying this is a supervisor certificate. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
So to do that, though, you need to listen to this episode, and you need to, when you apply on our website, you need to be able to give us our 2 secret code words. And the first code word is Maverick, 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 like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, or James Garner on the old TV show Maverick, or Mel Gibson in the movie version of the TV show Maverick, or John McCain,
Oh my goodness.
the political Maverick.
Okay.
Maverick.
There were so many of those choices.
Who knew?
Did you list Mel Gibson in there?
From the movie version of the TV show
I
Maverick.
wasn't listening.
Oh, yes.
It was amazing.
Okay, sorry.
My mouth was open like, wow.
Maverick. And me, the maverick of naming Maverick-related Maverick movies.
All right, point number 2 is underneath this heading of 3 criteria for specifying staff behavior, is that performance responsibilities must be described in terms of directly observable behavior. So that's
an easy
one. That
one.
really piggybacks right off number 1, which was define it. And now number 2 is define it in a way that you can observe.
I hope everyone listening just would naturally have done that without being told. But just in case.
It's okay to hear it again, I think.
Yes.
Because it's like a different idea to get your head around, you know. So they're saying define behavior in such a way that you can walk in to their classroom or your area and determine right away if the staff are doing the job performance responsibilities that they need to do, right? So you should have it really clearly defined. And I liked the example that they gave here, which was, let's say you've instructed your staff that you need to give a lot of choices to the clients, right? And provide them a lot of opportunities for making choice.
Which stovepipe hat color would you prefer?
Right. I would pick maroon.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's very dignified.
However, what if you walk in and see one of your staff offering a choice, but the client does nothing in response, and the staff member just moves on? Well, you've defined that behavior partially, but not thoroughly enough, because I guess I would also be unsure at that point in time, like, well, did they offer the choice? I mean, they offered the choice, but it was all for naught because they didn't follow through. They didn't have the client do anything in response. Part of that definition may need to include client behavior as well, that they're going to offer the choice, and if the client does not respond, then the staff member would also prompt a choice in some capacity. So I thought that was really helpful to consider, too, that you might need to define the behavior a lot further than you initially planned.
And you will know this by doing observations, right? So just because you define something doesn't mean that it's the holy grail of your definitions.
Which really rolls right into point number 3.
Oh, goodness. It's like I've read the book.
What do you know? Which is that these performance responsibilities really need to be defined so that multiple people can observe and identify the same behavior. Which means, as we know, that you need to get IOA on your response definitions, even for your staff, in order to ensure that you're measuring what you think you're measuring and that you're holding your staff accountable to actual goals.
Yeah.
This is easy for something like making choices, right? But it is harder if you're going to try and define things like showing initiative. But that's why it's important. Okay, moving from there, they also started to talk about some strategies for specifying these performance responsibilities as they would relate to the employees. And I thought this was helpful.
I did too, actually.
These
I thought
are
it was
really good.
very helpful. I love these specific examples that I can take from the book and then just quickly apply to my real life.
Yeah, totally. So one of the ideas that they listed out was putting in a performance checklist for your employees. And this could be related to broader tasks, like, over the course of this time period, you need to get all of these things done. Or it could be related to something really specific, basically like a task analysis of this. You're going to complete, it was cleaning off the porch was the example. So every evening at the end of the shift, you're going to be responsible for cleaning off the porch. And that includes moving any trash, removing any extra items, straightening the chairs, sweeping the porch, and watering the plants. And listing it out in that way, then you can confirm with someone really easily, oh, hey, did you clean off the porch? And they're going to say, yep, I cleaned off the porch. And you guys are going to be in agreement that you mean the same thing about cleaning off the porch. Rob is staring at me. I'm wondering if he's thinking that this should be applied to our personal life, because often our definitions of cleaning something are not the same.
No, a little bit different. No, I was more thinking, I wish I'd read this, 3 or 4 years ago when I started having to do a lot more supervision, because it felt like every time I'd supervise someone doing a skill, and it would be an easy, like, basic skill, like a preference assessment, where there are published, I think it's Roscoe et al. had an article in Java where they list, these are the steps of doing a preference assessment.
Karsten and all,
Maybe it was
2012 did it too.
Yeah. They're out there. And I never bothered to, I put them in the training, but I'd never, take them with me or write them down. So I'd be like, oh, I forgot? And I think they did. And, man, just the reminder of, hey, wouldn't it make a ton of sense to have these things easily spelled out in front of you while you observe staff? It took me years to figure out, you know what? I should probably not just take these from I have them in my training. I have a training in which it lists the steps that I show my staff. I never brought that with me, though. And I never shared it with anyone else I wanted to supervise. So it was one of those skills that I wish I'd just seen it, because it sounds so easy. But, man, I knew people needed a list, but I didn't know I should probably also be using the same list actively.
That's smart, yeah. It's like posting the hand washing TA in the bathroom. So that way you're ensuring that everyone's doing the same steps that you need them to complete. Or I've seen teachers put up a going home checklist for different students. So remember, this student needs to take home with him the home log, the lunchbox, the jacket, the snow boots, the PEX book, and
a big wave goodbye.
There we go. I ran out of items.
I know you did.
Stovepipe hat.
Stovepipe hat. And those types of things can be really helpful, because you might be working with multiple clients and it's hard to keep track of those things, or you could have multiple responsibilities throughout the day. And that way you don't have to ask anyone for help. You can just check the checklist and make sure that you're doing all the components.
Yeah, don't blame yourself when you can't remember every detail of every client you work with, because that's something you could do when you probably first started and you had one client or two, or you were a one-to-one and you knew every bit of information. But when you are supervising adults and clinically responsible for multiple consumers, you're not going to remember those details.
Yeah. As a university professor, I've really embraced the idea of a rubric, like a very specified rubric. So if someone wanted to get a perfect score on an assignment, they would know very specifically everything that I was looking for. And I've really tried to capture the rubric in all of my assignments.
Nice.
I'm still working on the study guides, though, because those are long.
Yeah.
But, like for exams, for anything written, I've been really embracing the rubric, so I can say, here, I can highlight exactly what they're missing, and I'm not like, good job.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I decided I hated this paper.
Right. I was in a bad mood when I was grading. You guys all
I was watching
suck.
TV while I watched this one.
Game of Thrones was on. Too many people died. Everybody failed.
I think another good point, we'll probably get into this more later too, is that these ideas that we're presenting here are all antecedent manipulations.
Absolutely.
Right? Because nothing is worse than knowing that you messed up and then having someone come in and say, guess what, guys? We're all going to try something new.
Yeah.
Now we have a checklist, right? You know that it was because of you and the mistake that you made. So the more of these things you can have in place beforehand, defining the behaviors clearly and providing these types of antecedent strategies for your staff, they can feel successful, not, either singled out or producing additional.
Yeah. And if you had to do that, Dinah, I would say, as long as it was not, hey, everybody, you're doing a bad job, so here's a check, so much as, hey, just because I want to make sure that I can supervise you all efficiently, I thought I needed this checklist. So why don't we go over it so you know what I'm looking for? Then it's one of those sort of more, it's supportive. I want you to be the best you can be, as opposed to either I'm not a good supervisor or you're all terrible at your jobs, but HR is making me document how bad you are before we can fire you all.
Yikes, man.
Which, well, this book did come back to a lot of what supervision has been for most people for years, is how can I find out the best way to get rid of you because you suck? It's just like this inherent piece of the supervision process for so long. And most people's history is, when I was supervised, all it meant is I'm just waiting to get in trouble. And that's how I see you, my supervisor. So any way you can avoid that.
The best way to avoid that is by spending more time with your staff.
Yes.
Engaging in reinforcing activities, providing positive, constructive feedback.
Exactly.
But you could also provide them with a work activity schedule.
Ooh, I like these. I wish I had a million of them. The way they wrote them down, where it's just like, if you gave someone a book of that, it's like, I know what to do every second of my day now.
I kind of want this for my real life. So if anyone feels like they want to practice writing a work activity schedule, I will send you my life schedule, and you can write me a work activity schedule.
I'd like to have one that is the to-do all done, where you can move them over.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, and it's done.
And done. And then at the end, there's like a star, and it's like, prize! Yeah.
I do like prizes, but when I first read it, I was like, ooh, work activity schedule, like, what's that going to look like? But it was written really appropriately. It wasn't, it was not a to-do all done type thing that would be, potentially insulting to your staff. It had a lot of nice information, including the when, the where, and with whom that a particular duty should be performed. And the example was, two individuals in a classroom who are working with a student preparing a lesson. One of them was intended to be the lead teacher. One of them was the co-teacher or the secondary teacher. So it defined each of those roles for them, because that could be confusing, right? So it laid out what each of them was expected to do in that scenario and how to respond. So I thought that actually could be quite helpful in different situations, particularly those complex situations. Like if you're a support staff to someone who's in an integrated setting, what is your role in that environment, and how do you define it?
Right. And so then no one's overstepping, right? So I know a lot of times when you're in that integrative setting, teachers may see you, oh, there's another body, so I can leave and go do something else. So then there's a one-to-one aide that's now in charge of 30 kids and their own kid. So having those work activity schedules for everyone would be really beneficial in that area.
Yeah. Also, as you were making something like this, it might really help you to identify the challenges in the roles that you're assigning to your staff.
Yeah.
Right? If you're writing it out and you're like, wait a minute, this seems impossible. There's no way one person can do all these things. Or, logistically, this seems really hard to pull off. Writing out something like this will help you kind of put yourself in their shoes and anticipate those problems before they have to bring them up to you. So it's a good tool in that sense as well. And then if you do have staff who are potentially moving between, varying assignments or needing to serve as sort of a substitute in different areas or classrooms that they're not used to working in, having some of these prepared ahead of time would be hugely beneficial to them. So all in all, it seems like a really good tactic. All right, moving on. The last big point for this chapter was super duper important, and I'm so glad that it came up. It was, how do you, when you're specifying these work performance responsibilities, make sure that what you are writing and saying is acceptable to your staff? Because no one wants to go and put all of this effort into something and then have it be poorly received, right? And the authors talked about just by making this type of effort and clearly putting in a lot of thought into defining these job aspects for your employees. If it's clear to them that you are coming from a good place and putting in a lot of effort, then likely it will be well received. However, people don't always like being told what to do, right? So if you're coming in and you're writing all these checklists and performance objectives, and it could appear like you might be trying to micromanage them, right? And that's not a situation that you want to be in. So they said that really the best way that you can prevent that from happening is to involve your staff in this process as you're working on identifying appropriate performance objectives for them. The more that they can participate with you, the more they are likely to buy into those objectives and work toward them as well. And they said that staff really seem to prefer that, and that's called participative supervision.
Ooh, nice job using that word.
Thank you so much. It also reminded me of another term that I know, which is called being a seagull supervisor. Have you guys heard of that? It's someone who just shows up, flies around, makes a lot of noise, poops on everything, and then leaves.
I love that. I hope that I am not that supervisor.
Right. So you don't want to be a seagull supervisor. You want to be someone who is there with your staff every step of the way, involving them in these types of decisions, and not just swooping in and saying, well, what I say goes, and then leaving again.
You want to be a robin.
Why a robin?
Because they're cuter.
Cute, yeah.
They're cute. They can't swoop in. They're not really swooping birds. They're just sitting and always being there birds.
Oh.
Nice.
Thanks.
I like it.
Thanks. They stay until winter.
Then I'm out of here. So the benefits of something like this are that the staff really do appreciate being involved. You can get a lot of valuable information from your staff as far as what are appropriate objectives and, what you should really be prioritizing. And when you're thinking about these objectives, again, if you want to get input from your staff, but you also can make some decisions on your own too. So they recommend following those same rules, prioritizing what's going to be most beneficial for the clients, again, as well as what needs to be addressed in order to improve client outcome. And then as you're having these conversations with your staff, listen to what's important to them and continue to define based on the importance for the staff as well as the clients. So they listed out some things that are most likely important to staff based on past surveys that they have done, and they all made total sense. So, certainly if you're listening to this, you should check in with your own staff, but likely they may tell you some things that might be listed here as well, which first and foremost, what do you guys think it has to do with? If you are a staff, what is the thing that you care about more than anything?
When I have to be to work and when I get to be at home.
Yep. Your work schedule. Rob?
How can I not get in trouble?
Do your job, Rob. That's all you gotta do.
When can I eat?
What is that job?
When can I eat?
Why do I have to tell you that? You should know.
When can I eat?
Okay, good. Lunch schedules.
I love knowing when I need to eat.
Work schedules, lunch schedules, break schedules.
Am I going to have to do anything above and beyond what you've told me I'm going to have to do?
Getting by with the minimum? That's what you're worried about? Yeah, it actually is part of the list here. So you hit on a ton of them. Work schedules, when do I need to be there? When can I take a break? When can I have lunch? Also, who am I going to be working with? In the social services field, that is important. Right? So those type of assignments. If I need to be pulled to work somewhere else or sub in another part of the program, involving staff in those decisions and letting them know the rationale behind it is incredibly important. Do I have to do overtime? Yeah, Jackie's making a face. And then are you about to put additional responsibilities on me above and beyond my normal job? So any of the time that these types of things need to be changed or need to be discussed, you want to be involving your staff most definitely in those decisions so that they can understand why they're being made, they can give their input, and they can be more on board.
Okay.
So, to summarize, behavior is behavior. If you're addressing employee behavior, then you want to be looking at it in the same way that we look at other behavior. Define it carefully and ensure that you are working from a good definition so that if behavior increases or decreases, you can say with certainty that the changes that you see are the changes that you were looking for. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of good strategies for doing this and incorporating these types of performance responsibility checklists, things like that, into the job. And then finally, you want to get buy-in from your staff. So incorporating their input into this as much as possible as you're developing these goals is really important. Mm-hmm. The end.
Excellent. But not of the book, just of that chapter.
Just of that
in
chapter.
that section. All right, well, before we go on to our last section of the episode where we talk about how do you do this here training, why don't we take a little break? And then we'll be right back.
Hey, ABA Inside Trackers. Are you interested in being a behavior analyst and you're not yet? If so, I really would recommend looking into the Regis College Masters in Science and Applied Behavior Analysis program. Our 2016 pass rates for first-time test takers of the BCBA exam was 90%. We think this is a true testament to our program. In addition, we're going to be starting an on-campus autism center in the summer of 2017. This is going to allow our graduate students on-hands learning right at our college, and you will receive partial tuition remission if you work at the center, which is pretty amazing. We also offer paid clinical placements and graduate assistantships starting in our students' first year, where all of our grad students are working in the field either part-time or full-time. I find you that job. That is part of my job. We also are approved by the BACB to provide intensive practicum, so students will complete 750 hours of an intensive practicum across their time at Regis. All of our faculty are PhD-level BCBAs with strong applied and research backgrounds in ABA, and all have published papers in respected peer-reviewed journals. We ensure small class sizes so that all students receive personalized attention from their professors and advisors are easily accessible to meet with students. Two more really great things that I want to highlight about the Regis program is that we host an invited lecture series at Regis each year, which involves inviting outside experts in ABA to speak on specialized topics relating to practicing ABA. Last summer, we completed an international service trip to Iceland. This trip enabled students to learn more about providing culturally competent care to diverse populations. Students and alums work with children diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder and provided parent and teacher trainings for 11 days. This service trip occurs every other year, and the next trip will be in the summer of 2018. And finally, we have a great location. We're just 12 miles from the center of Boston. We currently have rolling admission. We're accepting students until we reach capacity for the fall of 2017. Please check us out at www.regiscollege.edu.
And we're back from a fun break. And we're going to talk about my chapter. I'm going to talk to you all about basically behavioral skills training, but you can call it any number of things. Training staff effectively through evidence-based procedures, competency-based training, behavior skills training. They kind of use the terms, you can use the terms interchangeably. So don't feel bad if I call it the wrong thing. Now, there are probably two the largest topics in the book are how to train staff and then how to monitor staff. So we didn't want to, since we're already, we're going a little bit long. We wanted to make sure that we gave nothing short shrift. So we're going to go over the overview of what that training should look like very briefly. And then we're going to come back with our next episode. We're going to go through it again. And that's going to be where we share our anecdotes and our own personal tips. So please don't feel like what you get today is all there is to it. This is just the overview if you've never heard of performance.
So nice. We're doing
training.
it twice.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I did want to make sure we talked about was, why is it important to train your staff to a competency level, or to use behavioral skills training? And there are a lot of reasons. Most folks think of training, it's probably a training that you've gotten at some point in your career. You sat down in a room, you watched a PowerPoint video, or you saw someone lecture on a topic, and it might have been an important behavior analysis topic, and they talked to you about it. And maybe you got a chance to ask questions, or you read a book chapter, and then you went and you took a test about it, and you passed the test with flying colors, and you were told that you are competent in discrete trial training, or incidental teaching, or manned training, or preference assessments, when in fact you have no idea how to do any of the things that I just listed because you've never done them. I know as a child, I got all A's in school, and I won many awards because I passed all my tests with high grades because I was great at reading and studying and then regurgitating the answers in a way that read very nicely. Did I know how to do any of the things I learned about? Nothing. No, because it was scary to do them because I might fail and embarrass myself. So I was very good at knowing, but not very good at doing. And one of the key reasons that you need to train your staff to engage in a specific work behavior performance to a competency criteria is because learning how to do something and then doing it are not the same skills at all.
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just knowing how to do something from a book doesn't necessarily generalize to being able to do it. So that's one of the reasons you will need to do meaningful training. The others is that a lot of times when you're working with new staff, you're going to be working with a lot of people who have no idea what to do, and they've never, ever had a job in this field. It'd be nice to think that this is a big field that we're in, especially if you work with children with autism. Everyone wants to help out, and you're getting tons of employees, and they've all worked somewhere before, so they're very proficient at these skills. Odds are you are getting someone who's their first job they've ever had, and they don't know what to do. They just know they want to help kids with autism or adults with autism, and that's great. That'll get you somewhere,
That's okay.
but it won't get you where you need to be a proficient staff member. So that's a great start point. So a lot of your staff will not know what they're doing, so you will need to train them how to do it, and they might be very scared to do it as well. A lot of times when you start in a new job, what is your main orientation on? We kind of talked about some of the behaviors that get defined and explained to you.
Don't be late.
Don't be late.
Take data.
They could tell you take data. They could tell you where to find your vacation forms.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a critical exposure, do this.
Yeah.
OSHA.
You need your OSHA skills. So things
You're
that...
a mandatory reporter.
Yep.
What's that?
Mandated reporter. It's mandatory. You're a mandated reporter. So things that are really... They're not irrelevant to working at your company or your school, but they are somewhat irrelevant to working with the individuals, so working with your clients. So a lot of those big trainings will not actually teach your new staff how do you actually do any of the job responsibilities you need to be doing. A lot of times training is all about how to do it quickly. I know I've worked at places where the question was always, how can you do this faster? Could you do this training in one day? I can only free up the staff to learn how to do their job for like 5 hours. Could you teach them everything they need to know in that window? And when I started as a supervisor, my answer was always, of course I can do it. You know
I'm
it.
the best.
I'm great
right?
at training. And over time it was, nope. I won't be able to teach them more than one skill. And people didn't like that, and they got pissed about it. And my question became, would you like them to know how to do their job? Or would you just like them to have seen some PowerPoint slides so you can tell other people, look at our great trainings? And I knew which answer I wanted. And usually they agreed that I had the right answer. Sometimes, and this book mentions that some companies are really all about, look, we have this training. Does anyone know how to do it? No, but we did it. So that's always a problem. A lot of the orientation, a lot of the new hire training is not going to be relevant, nor is it going to be given the time it needs. So that's going to come to you, the supervisor, to realize this is not acceptable. We're going to do a better job. And to do that, you're going to engage in our evidence-based training. And it's that third step, showing people how to engage in competency-based training, or training them to a level of proficiency or to competence. All right. So to do that in your performance training, what you basically are going to have to do is show staff how to perform their duties, then make sure that they can perform those duties under your watch as their supervisor. And you do this over and over until they are competent in the skill, meaning that you've watched them do it and it met the criteria, it met your skills checklist, met whatever criteria you have for competence. So you can imagine that will take a lot of time, and that's why we'll spend more time on this next episode as well. But the basic steps are pretty much the same as behavioral skills training, though Reid, Parsons, and Green do add one or two steps that I don't think I've seen necessarily in some of the behavior skills literature. The first is describe the skill. That I have seen. So we've talked a lot about that, Diana. You talked about that. What is the skill that you would like your staff to engage in? Number two, give a written summary of the skill. Now, this isn't necessarily required in some of the behavior skills training. However, it is very helpful when folks have a list of skills. And I've had a lot of staff keep lists I've given them or checklists I've given them. They have them on a binder. I had a lot of people call it their ABA Bible, which always really touched my heart. And I felt really guilty because I'm like, it probably wasn't that good. Don't call it that.
I want a copy.
I got all the. We can talk more, but I have a lot of them lying around that I'd be happy to, like with PLS, to like throw up on the. Well, no. Yeah.
I think just as a quick point, being able to give instructions in multiple formats is really helpful. Mm-hmm. So some of your staff may be great auditory processors, but some may not. For some, English might be a second language. Mm-hmm. And being able to give a written copy so that they have a visual and textual representation of what they need to do can be really helpful as well. Yeah,
as much as you can. They sort of poo-poo it in the book, but even if you have the visual or you have a movie version of some of what you're doing, can be very helpful to some staff. I don't know who wants to learn. I'd rather learn through reading than through watching, but there's a reason that people subscribe to billions and billions of YouTube channels, and those things get popular because more people want to watch.
I like both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll go into some of that next time.
Okay.
Finally, after you've described the skill, your staff have a written summary of it. You need to demonstrate the skill yourself. So you need to know what skill you want them to engage in. You know what's on the checklist, and you need to be able to engage in that skill, or at least have gotten help from someone who can engage in that skill and demonstrate it effectively, the way you want to see it.
So don't get rusty.
Don't get rusty. No.
Okay.
If you're a supervisor who can, nobody wants to work for a supervisor that they've never seen do the skill. I've had supervisors I've never seen work with a client, and I had no respect for them, nor did I listen to them. And this was even when I was scared and young, and I was worried I was going to get fired if I was, not perfect. Even then, I knew it wasn't acceptable. After that, you'll have staff practice that target skill, and you'll give them feedback. And we'll spend more time next week talking exactly about what feedback is. But basically, we'll boil down to you will tell them what they are doing wrong, and you will praise them for what they are doing right, and you will be very specific about what it is they are doing correctly, and you will be specific about what it is they need to do differently, and how, and you may show them again. Then finally, they'll do it again, and again, and again, until they are competent in the skill, and you've watched them be competent in the skill.
That's step 5.
That's step 5.
Again and again and again and again and again.
Just like in Dude, Where's My Car,
Dude, Where's My Car?
And then.
Someone
actually emailed us with the movie clip, though. They actually have the clip itself.
Multiple people let us know that it is Dude, Where's My Car?
Thanks, multiple people.
Yes, thank you, guys.
All right, and then again, not only do you need to be able to do all of these steps in the process of potentially, a big class-wide training. If you did it in a big class-wide training, guess what? You now got to go back and do it in vivo, while you are working with the staff, while they are working with whomever it is they need to be engaging in these skills,
So
whether
important.
it's the consumer, whether it's another staff member, whoever it may be. So they then need to show you the skill again and again and again until they're showing competency.
And then
there are some ways you can kind of cut down. I don't want to say cut down the time, but you can be more efficient with your time. However, you will always be watching people demonstrate the skill. So that means some staff will get it, boom, boom, watch it twice, it looks perfect, see it with the client, oh, you're amazing. You will have staff where you have to watch it 50 times, and it's not even a hard challenge. It's not even with an actual consumer or client. It's with you, and you're making it as easy as humanly possible. But you still have to do it if you want to be engaged in effective training. And so that is those are the basics of training to competence or behavior skills training. So next time what we're going to start with is exactly that. These steps in detail with some more specific examples for folks who've never had to train before. Because it sounds easy, but at the same time, there's very little in this field. I mean, if this stuff were super easy and you could just tell people how to do it, we would have skipped steps 3, probably skip step 4 and 5. You just do 1, 2, 3. Here's the list. Watch me. All right, everybody, go get them.
you've done it.
I'll never see you again.
Yeah,
I might
right.
walk in and run around and poop all over everything, but that's the last you'll see of me. Let's do a quick summary for everyone just to kind of reiterate where they are after our first section. So we talked about the 7 steps of evidence-based supervision. Jackie, could you go over those 7 steps one more time?
I sure can. Step 1, identify desired consumer outcomes. Step 2, specify what staff must do to assist consumers in attaining desired outcomes. Step 3, train staff in the performance skills specified in Step 2. Step 4, monitor staff performance. Step 5, support proficient staff performance. Step 6, correct non-proficient staff performance. And Step 7, continuously evaluate staff performance and consumer outcome attainment through an active process.
All right. So we've
Ad nauseum.
Yeah.
So we talked about the first 2 and a little bit of the third one. Diana, can you give just a really quick summary? So
If you want your staff to do stuff, you need to define what that stuff is in a way that you and they can agree on it.
And it's got to be observable.
And it needs to be observable.
Yep. And then when you want to train staff, you must train them to proficiency by telling them what it is you're going to teach them how to do, showing them both in writing and in actuality, then by making sure that they can engage in the skill themselves. You know, eventually it has to be with a client, but it could also be in a role play situation with you, but they have to do it until they reach a level of proficiency as laid out and defined. And then you just keep doing it until they're competent.
All the while maintaining a supportive, constructive environment.
Yes, and we'll get into some of the extra supportiveness next week.
The layers.
The layers.
The layers
upon
of the
layers
onions.
upon layers.
The layers of onions.
I love it. I love how
Behavior
we had this plan for supervision, and even in planning for it, it was like, oh wait, there's so much more to go over than just in the book.
I know.
That's how it always is. And supervision I find to be fun. I'm
Me
glad
too.
I'm glad we're getting a chance to finally get around to do this. I know any chance I have to refresh my memory on supervision, to hone the craft of supervision is just awesome, because honestly, if you're in this field for any length of time, you're going to be a supervisor.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to either refuse to be a supervisor or be really bad and no one wants to promote
If
you and
you're a
everyone hates working with
BCBA,
you.
You're a
But,
supervisor.
yeah.
You're going to supervise
Yeah, you're
staff.
supervising stuff. There's no way around it. I love in the book how much they're like, you might be supervising staff, but you got to get the clinician to come help you talk about a behavior plan. I'm like, I wish I was in this luxurious job where all I had to do was train staff how to do other people's behavior plans, as opposed to, oh, I wrote that. No. Yeah, I know how to do it because I had to write that. I got 10 more I got to go finish after I'm done training you to competency here. But I'll get it done. Don't worry. It's fine. We're having fun. This is great.
I'm okay.
Change your
guys.
lives. Change your
Yeah.
lives. I mean, I want to work in that business where
Me
it's just
too.
like, oh, someone else did all the really hard work. I just had to learn about supervision. Wow.
It's funny.
But this is important stuff,
Yes.
because you don't want to just know about behavior analysis and be able to pass your BACB exam.
Minimum requirement.
Right?
Hashtag
Yep.
backwards. Hashtag minimum requirement.
and then get thrown out there in the field and have no idea how to motivate your staff or train and maintain their behavior. And that has a huge impact on client outcome, just as writing a good behavior plan does. So I think that the focus...
Possibly more.
Yeah.
I'd say I think it's definitely more, because anyone can write a behavior plan. But I mean, we did a whole episode about who cares if nobody likes you and nobody likes listening to you talk about your plan, or you can't describe your plan. Nobody's going to follow it. So your plan's zero.
Yeah. So this is hugely important, and I'm glad that it's a focus.
Hugely important
for our field.
All right. Well, no dissemination station on these episodes, really. We'll kind of just do summaries. And a lot of our dissemination, I think we're going to do throughout the book. So don't be surprised. You won't hear the train track for a little bit.
But don't worry, we're on the train still. We're
still
on the train to the journey to be the best supervisors that we can be.
That's right. That's right. We'll get there. Don't worry. We'll all get there together. We're riding first class here. So before we go, if you are applying for continuing education credits, our second secret code word is GOOSE. GOOSE, like the other guy in Top Gun, or the Canadian goose that we see a lot of around here in New England, but they're all going to be gone pretty soon because it's going to get chilly.
How about mother?
Or mother goose.
The Mother Goose cemetery site is in Boston.
Oh, really?
Yep. Right across from Beantown Pub.
Like the real
woman,
lady?
The real lady who was Mother Goose is buried
I don't
in
know
Boston.
anything about that
She used
story.
to ride her giant goose through the streets of Boston,
Yep.
stealing children.
And they turned into ducklings.
No, I think she just got together. She wrote poems.
Yeah.
She got a bunch of poems together.
It's in the cemetery across from Beantown Pub.
Yay. Let's go check that out.
The more you know.
Thank you. And we're sponsored by the Boston Tourism Society. All right, so those are our two secret code words. Now, just to let everybody know, we are going to have multiple episodes about supervision. So your options, if you're just listening because you love our voices and you love the topics we're going over, that's fine. These are free. That's what this information is for. However, if you do want to apply for continuing education credits, then you have two options. One is the a la carte, just as the episodes come out. The other is, since these are part of a series, and since we understand that if you are trying to get supervision CEs, you need them in a group of CEs. Most likely you want at least 3 that you would probably want to buy more in bulk, and so that will be an option. However, it will not be an option that you can purchase until we're done with all of the episodes. So it will be, when they're all out and published, we will have a separate page where you can just get all the CEs at once, put all your secret code words in together. And since anyone who is interested in spending that much time with us, we do want to reward you, so there will be a slight discount on the price you will pay versus for all of them together versus if you just get them one at a time, just to say thanks for listening to multiple hours of our talking and hopefully also enjoying it.
Melodic voices.
And that's all we have for our first part of supervision. If you enjoyed our show, please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe and leave us a review. You can also find us on Facebook or Twitter as ABA Inside Track. You can email us with comments or questions at abainsidetrack@gmail.com as well. And of course, the website abainsidetrack.com.
I also made a spot on the Facebook page to leave reviews there too.
Yes, and someone utilized it today.
Yeah, two people have given us reviews.
So
thank
if you're
you,
on
those
there
people.
and you want to throw some stars up there, we would appreciate that too.
Yes. Oh, we're also on YouTube. Our preview videos go up there, and sometimes we'll have other videos, but we haven't had any, just the preview videos recently. But you can check us out there. I know some people had asked, could you put your episodes on YouTube? Which I guess we could, though I don't know why you'd want to watch a YouTube video where it's just our audio. But if more people are interested, please let us know. We can. It's not hard to do. It's just, what's the point? But hey, I don't know. Maybe that's how some people like to listen, with YouTube open in the background. Anyway, thanks so much, Jackie and Diana, for being here. I always love having you discussing these great topics with me.
Thanks for the positive feedback, Rob.
Thanks for being very specific, Rob.
Everyone else, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with not just a preview, but an actual full-length episode about supervision. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.